take care of your brain. Love your brain, because it runs everything that you are. It runs decisions. It runs when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. It runs when you go to work, or you're talking here. It runs your, like, when you're actually going to be full from eating. Like, it runs everything. So if you don't have a fully functioning brain, you're not going to be functioning better or well.
All right, well, welcome to the Karla Rand Show. I'm on here with Karla Weiss, and Karla and I have the same name, and we actually have a lot of similarities, Karla, which is really cool. One thing that we're not the same is you're a nurse, and I'm not. But Karla, so we kind of met because this whole thing with Alberta Health Services here in Canada, they're putting some mandates around, mandates around getting the vaccine for people in the healthcare type of disciplines, but also in a lot of other places. Basically, any employer at this point that has 100 employees or more is basically forced to ask all of their employees to get vaccinated. So that kind of came up with us, and we sort of talked about that. So you've got a lot going on, and we want to kind of hear about how this came up and what's going on. So let's get into that. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, sort of where you grew up, a little bit about your family, just so we kind of understand you a little bit more?
Okay. Well, as you said, my name is Karla. I am originally from Grand Prairie, Alberta. I grew up on a farm and loved the farm life. It was very peaceful and quiet and simple. And I am the youngest of 4 siblings. And they all live there, and I live here. I was in Grand Prairie up until about 3 years ago, and then we moved to St. Albert, where I have my family here. I am married, and I have four children. And yes, as Karla was saying, I am a nurse. Been a nurse since 2006, but I've been in the health field for almost 28 years.
Wow.
And I also, my other background is that I am a holistic health coach and an Amen Clinic certified brain health trainer. And I teach people about how to get healthy for their brain and why that is important and how we can do that.
Yeah, and it was so cool when you said that you were an Amen Clinic kind of health coach, a brain health coach, whatever. It was so interesting because I just came across Dr. Amen, and I just recently started kind of looking at some of his stuff, and I was like, oh, he's got some interesting things to say. And so when you mentioned it, like, if I would have talked to you even a month or two ago, I wouldn't have had a clue what we were talking about. But I was like, oh, I get that. That's really cool. So yeah, Dr. Amen, his big thing is brain, the health of your brain, and he does brain scans and all kinds of stuff for a lot of like really renowned people, and really kind of helps them understand themselves more. So it's a really interesting thing that he's doing. And so it's cool that you kind of got part of it and got some training under sort of his umbrella and learning like how to help the brain. And so it's neat. Like those of you who are watching, you're not going to see this, but those of you who are listening aren't going to see this, but those of you who are watching are going to be able to see that you have this radically transformed coaching backdrop there, and you've got a picture of the brain and books and stuff. So it kind of shows what we want to talk about. But let's talk about your nursing career a little bit. What kind of got you into nursing, Karla?
Well, ideally, you know how when you say that when you're a little kid, you kind of do these little different hobbies and things like that. Well, back in kindergarten, I was the nurse, and I always wanted to be the nurse, and nobody else could be the nurse in kindergarten. And so it just kind of, I guess that was the very first part, not that was my transformational step to nursing, but just all throughout growing up, I was a volunteer, or what you call a candy striper, wore those pinstripe uniforms and a little hat and everything. And I worked in the hospital for a couple of years doing that, and just seeing different types of patients and stuff. Then I transferred into the nursing aide role, which is now RCAs or NAs now is the term, but they have schooling. And at that time, I didn't have to take any schooling. So I was that for 8 years, and then kind of transferred into the LPN, and then went up in the ranks to the RN. But I've always enjoyed taking care of people. And somebody had asked me recently, what is your passion in regards to nursing? And I said, I like being a helper. Overall, like being a helper, whether that is helping them do their basic needs, helping them take their medication, helping them get well, or helping them to stay healthy. It's just that helper role is what I have a passion about in terms of nursing.
Yeah, so you've been nursing for quite a few years. How many years would that be that you've been a nurse, an RN?
An RN since 2006, that'll be 14,
Okay.
14 years, I believe. Yes.
Okay.
So,
And you've been told that you need to get what vaccinated in order to continue working. So if you
yeah.
don't get vaccinated, you will lose your job in a very short period of time, correct?
So September 1st, AHS sent out a general letter to all employees saying that they need to be vaccinated with their second dose no later than October 16th, and then with a 2-week waiting period to be fully done and completed by October 31st. If that is not complied with, we have 2 weeks of unpaid leave of absence in order to comply or get the vaccine. And then we have a discussion with the medical officer of health, meaning that we are out of our job. And currently, I don't stand for this mandate. Reason why is it's mandated. That's one of the big reasons. Because I have prior knowledge of being a public health nurse, and as a nurse, when you take your training, we are taught to criticize, not to criticize, but to critically analyze things, tear it apart, look at the best evidence, and have a valid consent of, yes, I want to go ahead, or no, I want to go, I don't want to go ahead. And so with this one being mandated, being forced on us, I don't think that's definitely not right. We should have the choice. The other reason why I'm not getting this vaccine is because of other information that I have read, I have researched, things like that, the damaging effects that it does to our bodies, whether you are men, women, child, adults, seniors, and we don't know how long it's going to take to have this damaging effect, like blood clots, heart problems, miscarriages, just to name a few. I mean, there's oodles of catastrophic event damaging to our bodies. And because the vaccine, it sheds through your skin and your mucous membranes, so those who are vaccinated are actually spreading it to others because it's shedding through their skin and mucous membranes, and those who are unvaccinated are getting sick from the vaccinated. So there's a numerous amount of reasons why I am totally against this vaccine. They really haven't looked into the true science of this vaccine and why they need to take longer research of it. It is not safe for our bodies. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I was talking to a doctor just yesterday, actually, and I was kind of asking him about it, and he said, and I've heard this from a nurse too, but it was interesting to also hear it from a doctor, and he's been a doctor for many years. I believe he's in his 60s now, and he said that it has not been proven to be safe, particularly for pregnant women.
Yeah.
Like he said, he's quite worried that they're giving it to pregnant women, and he's not okay with that. And I'm talking to a nurse too who was trained to administer the vaccine, and right on the packaging it said not safe for pregnant women. But then I guess her whoever was kind of telling her what to do said, "Oh no, just give it to them. It's fine. Don't worry about it." So she was kind of like, "Well, I learned that it wasn't okay. It wasn't safe, and you're telling me it is." So it's a little bit sketchy, and it's interesting too because we're not hearing that, because I'm hearing like a lot of personal stories of people either dying from the vaccine or getting sick from the vaccine or having other side effects from the vaccine. I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, and blood clots and that kind of stuff. But you sure don't like you just don't hear the government talking about that. You don't hear the mainstream media talking about it. It's just like they completely ignore it. So it's no wonder that a lot of people who aren't doing their own research and looking into things outside of the mainstream media to really not question it, right? Because they're just like, oh, I mean, I also know a lot of people that got the vaccine and they seem, at least at this point, totally fine, right? So I think, you could make a case, well, it seems safe for the majority of people. But there are some people that have actually lost their lives, and there are many people that have gotten sick or somehow, been affected negatively.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And um, just, they do. I don't know if I'm free to share the websites where I got information from, but it's numerous amount of doctors that have actually personally actually worked for some of these companies like Merck and Pfizer and things like that have come out of it. And it's unfortunate. Yes, some of these stats you see about COVID numbers. I mean, I'm sure it's happening here in Canada, but in the States, they've actually fuddled the reason why they are dying. They put on COVID and not the actual real reason, because they want to make it worse than it actually is. And it's just so wrong. What's actually happening, and even just to have these vaccine passports. I mean, even here in Canada, they're breaking the Canadian Constitution rights of freedom of choice, of thought, of speech, our human rights of being able to choose what goes actually into our bodies. I mean, they're taking that right away from us, and we're supposed to be a free country, but it doesn't even seem like that's the case anymore. And even businesses that have, oh, you can't go into the business until you prove us that you have, all your vaccines up to date. That's really none of their business what vaccines that I have in my body. And so it's just, there's lots of very questionable things that are going on in society, whether it's government and healthcare. And what's sad is that they've dealt so much into the fear aspect. And just because we've been social isolating for so long, and they dive into that fear, oh, if you don't get this vaccine, you're going to die. If you don't get this vaccine, you can't do this, you can't travel, all that kind of stuff, all this fear factor. So then what people do is they jump in and thinking, well, healthcare system wouldn't be lying to me. The government wouldn't be lying to me. I'm sorry. As much as I've been a nurse for 14 years, you honestly can't trust any of these health people anymore. The government, they're out for their own purposes, their own agenda. We need to wake up and start doing our own research of credible sites who are giving us true and valuable information about what is happening and what they're forcing us to put into into our bodies.
Yeah, there was an ethics professor who was sharing that she had been a professor at this institution for 20 years and had, obviously she said she had a good relationship with her superiors and they were happy with her work, and they are now going to fire her because she's not getting vaccinated. And so she was basically saying this is unethical because, she's a professor of ethics. So she was kind of like, putting two and two together and realizing it. So, I mean, I've heard so many different views. And I think too, there's always a little bit of truth to each thing, right? And I think that's why it's really hard to kind of know, I guess, which side to go to, right? Because it's like, well, this is true, but this is true. And, are these guys taking it out of context, or like who's right, And I think it's a little bit tricky too, because a lot of people that are speaking up against, say the vaccine or the vaccine passport, or, the fact that it might be unethical or whatever, they're considered conspiracy theorists, they're considered radical, and they're very, very much censored. And so they're really not being heard, right? So a lot of people are just hearing the one perspective.
Yeah.
So it's very tricky, and I think it's important, like you said, that we really just do our own research and think critically and not just take what is sort of handed to us through the media as absolute truth, right? There might be another side to it.
Yeah. 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 And another thing too, if you're feeling discouraged or feeling like you're the only one, you're not alone. I thought I was the only one at my workplace that was going to be against this vaccine. And now, as I look more and more into this, I am going into there's 9 people now at my workplace, and so you're not alone. So, if you need support, reach out, because yesterday I was even in a rally where people came together and were showing support of, going against all these mandates. And I was actually so encouraged that there are so many people out there, whether they were in the healthcare field or not, that are giving support, are giving encouragement. It's not going to be easy, but that's what we need. We need to come together. We need to support each other and to know that. And it's not bashing. Like, if somebody wants to get the vaccine, that's their decision. And that's their opinion, that's a decision. But, they need to also respect those who don't want to get this vaccine too, and so that they don't have to be. I mean, because we found there were some people there were just, they gave us the royal salute as they drove by, and it was so sad to see the hatred that's coming out because of this. I mean, that is wrong. Why do we have to hate somebody just because of a decision that they've made? And we're all valued to our own opinion and our choices, and we need to respect that.
Yeah, I think that's I think the issue that most people have. Some people are very against the vaccine itself, but I'd say the majority aren't so much against the vaccine. What they're against are the mandates, right? The
Mm.
government saying, basically holding a gun to your head and saying, you get it or you lose your job, right? I think that's where most people are concerned. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Because you're predicting that you're most likely going to be laid off,
Mhm.
what do you kind of have? I mean, that's a significant, you know, uh, income that's going to be cut right off.
Yeah.
So you're kind of scrambling a little bit here, kind of figuring out, okay, what do I do? The good thing is that you already have quite a bit of training experience. Like, what do you sort of predict? Um, or I guess, what is your plan to kind of like somehow continue to make income, that the income that you need?
Okay. Well, I'm still looking for other kind of part-time nursing positions, but also I am actually also teaching 4 courses that were offered through Amy University that I'm able to teach. One is on memory rescue, and knowing the risk factors of having a poor memory and how to optimize your memory. That's one. The other one is Brain Thrive by 25. The decisions that you make when you're younger can greatly impact the how you live your life later on. So that's another one. Those are just two for example. And then also there's a fresh start for better health. Um, and that one teaches you all about health, about exercise, and your nutrition, your sleep patterns, things like that. And that goes over a 3-month period. So I actually want to market those three, to start, and then actually go from there. So.
Well, tell me a little bit about brain health. What do you think people need to know about their brain? Because a lot of people call it mental health, right? There's a little bit of a stigma associated with that sometimes, but calling it brain health, I think suddenly it just seems a little bit more relevant or a little bit less stigma, at least involved in that. What do people need to know about their brain that maybe they're just not aware of?
Well, your brain is, if you think of it, your brain is like the consistency of soft butter, kind of like between eggs and Jello, like it's like scrambled eggs and Jello, like they're just very soft, right? And it's encased in this hard skull with bony, sharp ridges. That anytime that you have a actual injury, or you have a car accident, or you bang your head, or anything like that, it actually damages your brain, which can impact your memory, your thought, your judgment, a whole bunch of things. So it's very important. Number one is knowing how and knowing why is important to take care of your brain. Love your brain, because it runs everything that you are. It runs decisions. It runs when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. It runs when you go to work, or you're talking here. It runs your, like, when you're actually going to be full from eating. Like, it runs everything. So if you don't have a fully functioning brain, you're not going to be functioning better. are well. And so the other thing is also to know um, things that are going to be helping your brain, like getting good sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, your stress level, reducing your stress level. Some stress is good, but chronic stress is not. So learning about that, learning about your your exercise, like being able to move, not so much like in a like aerobic class, but just moving all the time, and how that increases the blood flow to your brain. Your And then things that also that you want to avoid, and not just like the substance uses, but things that are around in our environment, like all of the environmental toxins. And actually negative thinking or negative people in your life, sometimes that's hard to do, but things like that, to kind of start looking at those type of things and how does that impact your brain. So one phrase I always say, whenever you're going through life, you have a question, is it good? Always ask, is this good or bad for my brain? That kind of helps you kind of know, like, okay, is that going to help me get healthier, or is it going to lead me into a wrong path that I don't want to go down on? And so that's the kind of the three main ones. But Dr. Amen usually, he has a four circle approach that he likes using, and I've incorporated that as well. It's on the biological health, so things that are good for our physical health, things that are good for our mental health, that's the psychological. Our social connections are super important, especially since we've gone through 18 months of self-isolation and apart from people, of being connected with other people. And also our spiritual health, not meaning that you have to be a part of a faith community, but just what is your why? What is your purpose? How do you connect with the world? How do you do self-care? Those are kind of the spiritual health, and those encompassing that is a really good starting point of getting healthier.
And I think it's so interesting. Yeah, I think it's so interesting because so many people, like, because I work with a lot of people that maybe they want to lose weight or they want to get healthier, but a lot of times they think of their body. So, getting healthier to them is losing weight, for example. So I've got to eat fewer calories, or I should eat more vegetables, or I should do this. And a lot of that kind of stuff will also help your brain. If you're very overweight and you lose some weight, that's also going to have a positive effect on your brain. If you eat your veggies and, good lean proteins and stuff, that's also going to have a positive effect on your brain. But a lot of times we think of just our bodies, right? Well, if we look a certain way, that must mean we're healthy. So a lot of people that maybe they're more lean, like they're more naturally lean per se, but they're drinking Coke and Pepsi all the time, they're eating chips, pop, fast food and whatever. And people might be like, well, they're probably healthy because they're not overweight, but their brain could be just a mess, right?
Yeah.
I know another thing that Dr. Amen talks about is how damaging something like alcohol is for your brain, for example. And I think a lot of people, if they really heard him talking about that, because I've heard him talk about it, and I'm like, yikes! Like I don't drink alcohol, but I know a lot of people who do. Like, I would say it seems like the majority of people do, and he's basically saying that there's really not necessarily like a safe amount of alcohol. It's just kind of best to avoid it, which is a really, really sort of seems very radical for our culture, because so many people, like, that's just the way they socialize, right? They just have a beer. But when you think of some like children with FAS, for example, right? It's like, it's kind of a big deal. If they have FAS, it's because it has an effect on their brain. So why would it also have some sort of effect on an adult's brain, right? So there's a lot of things, and like smoking weed, he said also, like obviously drugs and stuff, that has a negative effect on your brain. So I think to think of our health, not just like our body, like maybe our cardiovascular health and stuff, but realize how much it's all connected. And really the brain is the power center to your entire body. So if you don't have a healthy brain, that's going to affect everything, right?
Yeah. And two interesting facts actually in terms of your weight. He has a phenomenon called the dinosaur brain. So as your weight increases, the size and physical functioning of your brain decreases. So basically it shrinks your brain. So you're not thinking properly. When your weight goes up, you're not thinking properly of making healthy decisions, right? So as you're not thinking healthy, you're not happy, you're getting sicker, you're getting poorer because you're not making good decisions. So that's one thing to kind of think about in terms of your weight. It's You need to get your weight into control. The other thing too is that when you have issues that have happened in past generations, it's actually really important to know what's happened in your past, whether it's grandparents or beyond, because that can be transferred inadvertently up into the current generation and beyond if we don't recognize it and actually take note of it. For instance, like if there was trauma that's happened in your grandparents, you may not realize that it actually is being transferred into the next generation. So it's important to recognize those things, and you may not be traumatized yourself, but those type of effects can be maybe trickle back down into the next generation.
Yeah, and I mean that does kind of make sense, doesn't it? I think there's so much to health, and I think more and more people are looking at health in a very holistic way instead of just weight loss or just
Mm,
gut health, or just they're realizing how much it's all connected. And I think studying the brain and thinking of how your brain can be healthy is really going to benefit everything in
yeah,
every way, right?
yeah,
Because that, and it's not just your mental health, like you said, that can be more of a like a psychological thing, but just how it's all related and how the brain really functions everything. And a lot of people that are overweight, for example, they struggle with something like emotional eating, right? Well, a lot of that is from the brain. It's not really even about the food. It's they eat to satisfy some sort of emotion. So that gets into the whole like the psychological too, right? And it
yeah.
also gets into the spiritual. Like it's all connected. We're so intertwined. All of our bodies
Intertwined.
systems. It's so intertwined, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you are so correct. Is that you can't just think about, okay, I'm going to lose weight. No, what brought you to that point of being where you're at? Because those are the things that we need to examine and break down and work on, so that you don't stay at where you're at, right? That you get healthier, and healthier physically, mentally, social connections, your spiritual, all that. So it is much more than just taking this actual supplement or that diet plan or that exercise plan. It's looking at the wholeness of somebody, and that's why I love being where I'm at, is because it's body, soul, and mind all actually connected together. And
Mhm.
that if you look at all those three individual parts, they are all connected. And so we can't look at one without looking at the other two.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that people do get like coaching around that, because a lot of
Mhm.
people, they're just like, give me a meal plan, like you said, right? Or just give me a supplement, and I'll lose weight. It's like, no, there's so much more, because, yeah, how did you get there in the first place? Because that little
Yeah.
diet, maybe you'll lose weight because you'll somehow stick to that diet. And as soon as it's over, you'll be right back at square one, right? Um, so tell us, we need to wrap up pretty quick, but tell us, Karla, where do people go to kind of learn more about you, or if they want to work with you? Like maybe they're just finding that, you know what, I am not healthy. I need to get more healthy. Or maybe they're pretty healthy, but they're like, I want to absolutely optimize my health. I want my brain to be fully functioning. I just want to do everything I can to live as healthy and thrive and have a boosted immune system and all of that kind of stuff. How do they connect with you, Karla?
So my website is yourbraincounts.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Radically Transformed Coaching. But I also have a private group called Ignite Your Health. And so that one, where I give one-on-one training and challenges and things like that in there, and recipes and other tips and suggestions of how to get healthy. So that's a more one-on-one connection.
Cool. Yeah, and do you work with groups or mainly one-on-one? I'm just curious.
Both,
Both.
both.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and one-on-one I think is, I know with my nutrition coaching, one-on-one I can really get specific with somebody, whereas group stuff it's like, well, here's some general parameters, but if you need like a lot of like changed habits and behaviors, sometimes it's better to work one-on-one, I find. But there is a
Mhm.
lot of benefit also to being part of that group, right? Because then you see
Yeah,
other people also struggle, and there's that accountability and that motivation. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, Carlos. So any closing words, anything else that we should know maybe about brain health, or, and I mean like, and I really do want to encourage you in what you're doing, Karla, and that this, like, and it's cool that you do have this business, right? You have this coaching, you can help people. And I think the experience of you as a nurse for so many years in the health industry is going
Mm.
to be like such an asset for you to help people even more, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. One thing, I know it may seem overwhelming. We've talked about a lot of different topics and aspects of health, and it can be overwhelming. And you can hear so many variety of messages coming through different ways. But what I do want to encourage people is that if you're really serious about getting healthy, is start with one thing at a time.
Hmm.
Don't look at the whole picture, break it down. Okay. And this is where I in my coaching is I'll talk with you. Sorry. I'll talk with you in regards to where you are currently, where you want to go, um, what does health look like for you, and we start breaking down and giving you an individualized plan that's set for you. It's not what my agenda is, but what you want to accomplish. So as I always say is start with one thing first and then start building on that, because that's where you're going to get more longer lasting success.
Hmm. Well said, Karla. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I just really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, I don't want to say good luck, but God's blessings on you as you
Thank
move
you.
forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. I absolutely love that you joined us. I love being able to record these, and I love our guests. It's been so much fun. So thank you. Please like it, share it, comment, do all of the things that you feel like you want to do if you enjoyed this podcast. I really, really appreciate that. And this podcast has been brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. So everything that we do locally with our workouts, with our group nutrition coaching, and with all of the other fun events and stuff that we run, we put all of that online. So now you can access everything, even if you're not locally, don't live in our area. So my coaches and I and all my staff, the whole team, we are putting so much work into these workouts. We're filming 5 fresh workouts every single week so that you never have to do the same workout twice. We're also doing group nutrition and personal nutrition coaching so that you get exactly what you need. And you know what the best part is? It's the community. The absolute best part is just knowing that you have the support, that you have the encouragement, that you have everything you need to succeed. So go to powerfitnessonline.com.